Today I'm going to be talking about yet another reason not to believe the story of evolution. Yes, I'm going to call it a story for the rest of my life because that's what it is. It's not scientific at all. No one has ever observed any species turn into a different one. No, our ancestors are not fish, and no, our descendants cannot become dinosaurs. And no, it's not just as morally evil to eat broccoli as it is to eat a human being. There's something wrong with the latter. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about sex, one of the things that people are most obsessed with, not just these days, but throughout all of human history, and how atheists actually can't account for it, the existence of it. Well, I mean, obviously ignoring that they can't account for the existence of anything, but particularly this thing here that they are often obsessed with. They're going to accept that there's no ultimate meaning to life, like love your neighbor as yourself, that we accept as Christians. They're going to deny that, but also affirm things like the meaningfulness of sex and stuff like that. So on one hand, ultimately there's no meaning, but on the other hand, we can find so much meaning in what we do in this life and make your own meaning, that kind of thing. It's all subjective, right? So when it comes to the story or myth of evolution, we just have to understand a few things. There's an organism and it reproduces asexually, okay? So this turns into this, okay? But this is how all organisms reproduced at some point in the past, according to evolutionists. Now, we just have to wonder, okay, so since we as humans can't do this, I cannot reproduce on my own. I need someone else to do that, right? It's very simple. How did it go from this one organism reproducing on its own to, all right, now we need two organisms together doing something to create one new organism. All right. Well, now it's actually very simple. Again, to understand evolution, it doesn't take a PhD. You just have to understand that a whole bunch of different mutations have to occur between this organism and that organism in one generation. And let's just say that this organism is now a female, and within that same exact generation, this one organism produced the male version, okay? And now what we have to is when these two come together, you have a new species that reproduces sexually rather than asexually, okay? And yippee, now you have little baby, which is either going to be male or female, okay? Now, this is a very simple diagram, but this is essentially what you need. According to all known observation, nothing like this has ever happened in the history of mankind, so we do have to have a lot of faith, blind faith, that is, in something like this ever happening. But just think about it, guys. The whole appeal of the Darwinian story is that it takes millions or billions of years because we just got to get away from that 6-day creation of Genesis that God told us about. But you see, if we have millions of years, we have these random mutations, and after a while, it's going to go up to a bunch of different changes, bigger changes. And so this little tiny organism can turn into a philosopher like me. And also someone like me can have descendants that can eventually turn back into fish and microbes and broccoli and all sorts of other things. Anything is possible, of course. And we're just being humble. We don't claim to know anything for sure. And so the main thing that we want to fight against as evolutionists is this idea that anybody can be certain. Because you're not certain. You can't be. You're just a human. That's the thing with every evolutionist, is that they're going to be absolutely certain that they're not certain and that you aren't either. But it's really funny how that works. But again, the whole appeal of it is millions upon millions of years. Therefore, Genesis is wrong. We don't have to believe Genesis. There's a scientific way of understanding the past. And all of that just goes out the window when you think about the existence of sexual reproduction. Because if you only have a male descendant from a species that used to only produce asexually, if you only have a male, that male isn't going to have children because you need a female for that male. And so what do you need? You need what everyone would admit would be a miracle. You need the perfect corresponding mutation to fit the male so that they can start reproducing, okay? And that's just the beginning of it. They're going to insist that these mutations happen so slowly over millions of years, right? And so you just have to wonder, you have to ask, what good does a partially developed sexual organ do for an animal? What does it do? Except waste resources, waste energy. This idea of survival of the fittest also goes out the window. Okay, this animal wasting energy on the sexual organ that doesn't actually do anything for it yet because it's not reproducing sexually. How would we even find out that it's the most fit to survive? Well, only if it survives, and so it's circular anyways. But seriously, the more and more you think about evolution, the less and less it makes sense scientifically. This is why it would actually require a God to perform all these miracles throughout the course of history, the story of evolution, so that it can actually happen. So more realistically on the story of evolution, this transition from this asexual organism going into a sexual organism, this change would have to take place over millions of years, right? Thousands upon thousands of different generations. And eventually you get to a female here. And at the same time, there's a different line that produces into a male at the same time that somehow doesn't go into a different species off someplace else, but is perfectly aligned for this female here that descended from the same dude. So we've gone over two possibilities. In one generation, both of them, male, female, millions or perhaps billions of mutations within one generation so that they can reproduce sexually, they're perfectly compatible, and now they can have children. The other possibility is that somehow they have two different lines over millions of years and they eventually become male and female, and they just happen to become the same species after millions of years. Two different lines, two different lineages from this one organism, they turn into male and female of this new species. Now, another theory is the parasite theory. See, there's some parasites here. Let's just put one right here, or it's angry because it's a parasite. It lives off of this guy. And so after millions upon millions of years, you have this parasitic relationship going on. And so they're both undergoing all these different mutations and eventually become the male and female of the same species. Okay, so this would be a naturalistic way of explaining why women are so needy, I guess, because really they're just parasites. Or maybe it's the men who are parasites. We don't actually know. Now again, this line of millions upon millions of years of this parasitic relationship, all the mutations that they're going through, they are completely random, not guided to reach this end result here. It just happened to reach this end result over millions of years. And again, the same problems arise with this scenario, which is like what good is a partially developed sexual organ for one parasite and this organism here? What good is that? Why is that more advantageous than another organism that survives just fine producing asexually and has been undergoing mutations asexually for millions of years? Can't explain any of that stuff, of course. You're going to come up with theories upon theories upon theories to back up your theories upon theories upon theories. Again, all of this grants abiogenesis. We've never examined it before. Life just pops out of nowhere. And of course, you have the universe itself popping into existence for literally no reason whatsoever. Again, just the religion of no reason at all. They're going to claim science this, science that, but when you actually push them on where it actually matters, no reason that, no reason this. It's the religion of irrationalism, essentially. What they want to do is stay on the surface. Let's argue this: facts, logic, evidence, science. But let's not actually go to the heart of science. Why is science even possible? How is it that we can even reason at all? They never actually want to answer those questions because they know that's where God actually is, deep in their hearts. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. You know why people come up with the theory, the story of evolution? It's because they don't want the true story that God has given us in his word, his eyewitness testimony as to how he himself created the universe and humans and the existence of sex itself. They don't want that. They don't want the truth. It's not that they're ignorant of the truth. It's that they're suppressing it. It's because they hate the truth. Don't ever think for a second that these evolutionists out there are just stupid people and they're ignorant. No, they know, but they are suppressing, okay? Because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God made it evident to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, both his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. If they didn't know, then on the day of judgment, they could say, hey, I didn't know that you existed. I didn't know that my theory of evolution was wrong and that morality is subjective and really there is nothing wrong with anything that I do because I'm just a bag of chemicals. They could say all that and God would be like, hey, you know what? You have a good excuse. You didn't actually know it was wrong. No, they do know. That's precisely why God is able to judge them on that day and throw them straight to hell. For even though they knew God, they did not glorify him as God or give thanks, but they became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God. You see, I'm here because fish. I'm alive and I can breathe and I can listen to music and I can eat wonderful food and experience love and sex and friends and family and all this stuff. All these good things I experience because of crawling creatures, four-footed animals. You see, over millions upon millions of years, thanks be to nature itself, thanks be to these crawling creatures that fought and ate and hunted to survive, billions of years of awful suffering, death, and all this stuff. Oh, I'm so thankful that I'm here now, that I can experience all these things. Thankful to these things, not to God. They're exchanging what they know to be true, that there's this amazing world that we live in, fallen, of course. They know it's fallen as well. However, even in this fallen world, God gives us gifts to enjoy, like food, friends, family, different pleasures of life, but they're not giving thanks to God for those things. They're exchanging God for the image and the likeness of corruptible man, birds, four-footed animals, crawling creatures. Their own wisdom, their own senses, their reasoning. They're not giving thanks to God for the fact that they can even look out into the world and see anything at all. They're giving thanks to themselves and how their mind, my mind is better than the Christian's mind. He's reasoning this way. I'm reasoning this way. I'm reasoning better. Why? Because of evolution. Because I've reasoned this way. It's just me in and of myself. I'm thinking better than he is. And so again, at the end of the day, it's atheistic at heart. Every false religion, atheistic at heart. It's rejecting the one true God. I choose to believe this instead. This God over here, or even make yourself out to be God. I am the ultimate reasoner. So all this stuff that I explained in this super easy to understand, super scientific diagram shows that evolution, especially in regards to the existence of sex, it makes absolutely no sense. You know what? I don't really care about that though. At the end of the day, that is a surface level issue. What they're always going to want to do is argue on that surface level. Actually, I can account for the existence of sex because of this and that and that and that and this. I know that they can come up with more theories to back up their theories, which they haven't even proven in the first place. And they can literally do that forever. That's why I don't go there. If I were to talk to an atheist about evolution, I'm not actually going to debate evolution. I'm going to debate about the possibility of even proving evolution to begin with. They can't actually do it. And that's something that they're going to be very quick to admit. Now, let's just grant hypothetically for fun, because it's fun, right? Let's say evolution is true. Let's say somehow all these miracles without God actually happen and that we exist today. All right. Are we obligated to act in any certain way with this information? Okay, let's say that you're right about everything and I'm stupid and I'm a Bible thumper and I actually want to love my neighbor as myself because God told me to. Let's say that you're right and I'm wrong. Am I obligated to listen to you? On whose authority am I obligated to do that? What's the punishment for me if I don't listen to you? Is there any inherent meaning to any of this at all? The answer is no. Okay, so you tell me that you're right and I'm wrong. I can just tell you that you're wrong and I'm right. Because it's all subjective. It's all relative anyways. I'm just a bag of chemicals. It does not matter that you're right. I do not care that you're right. And if I don't care that you're right on atheism, it doesn't matter if you care that I don't care that you're right. It doesn't matter that I'm misleading thousands upon thousands of people, okay? Because there is nothing wrong with anything, because there's no such thing as right and wrong if we're all just bags of chemicals, right? There is no such thing as love either, right? I mean, you just look at the statistics of the United States, women, college-aged men and women, and all of the awful crimes that they commit, although they're not seen as crimes in the United States. People can fornicate all they want in this country, and it's disgusting. You see the suicide rates skyrocketing. You see the STDs. You have children, middle schoolers with STDs. You have all sorts of suffering as a result of this belief that we're just animals. Survival of the fittest, disease, all that stuff, reproduction. And again, if the goal is to simply reproduce and everything, why is it that Christians are the ones that are pushing that? And atheists are the ones... I think I've told a story before back in college. I was listening to a female preacher of the atheist persuasion, of course, teaching about how the world's getting overpopulated and we should not have children anymore. It's like, if a society wants to kill itself, suicide, you go to atheism. Look at all of the fruits of atheism. It's not good, objectively so. And that's not something that they can actually deny, at least in their hearts. They're going to deny it on the surface, like, school shootings, STDs, disobedience, all that kind of stuff. They know deep down that all that stuff is wrong. But on the surface, because they're suppressing the truth and unrighteousness, they're going to say it's all relative. Death isn't inherently a bad thing. It just feels bad to us. Death is just something that's just part of the world, and we just got to deal with it. And survival of the fittest, just nature doing its thing. And again, they can never be consistent with that. They're going to still go to funerals and cry, because it is written, God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the sky and over every living thing that creeps on the earth. Atheists cannot. What I love about the Christian worldview, what God has told us in his word, is that atheists cannot escape being made in the image of God. They're going to very, very obviously show how they know God. They know that they should be reflecting his image in some ways. Like, hey, I got to be thinking rationally here. Let's look at the evidence. Oh, science. They're also going to show their belief in objective morality too. No, we ought to teach this in schools. We ought to do this with politics and legislation and everything. They have all these different beliefs that they're going to show that they have deep in their hearts, but they're going to be twisting them in a certain way. Why should you be thinking rationally? If, again, you're just a bag of chemicals, there is no obligation to do that. But if we're made in the image of God, that makes sense. We should be thinking like our Creator. He's a rational thinker. He makes sense. Jesus has perfect thoughts all the time. He's never wrong. Secondly, he's also perfect. He always does the right thing. Third, he is beautiful. He recognizes beauty. Fourth, the whole idea of love your neighbor as yourself. Atheists are going to admit that sounds good to me, but they're going to have their own definition of that. This idea of communion, community, marriage, becoming one flesh with someone, just the concept of life itself. They're going to agree with all that stuff. Why? Because they're made in the image of God. Those are values that God has as well. But the atheists, they're going to be twisting all those values according to their own lusts, their own desires. As the scripture says, they are like unreasoning animals, born as creatures of instinct to be captured and killed. But of course, that's everybody by nature. We're all born in sin, willfully suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. But by the grace of God, some people's hearts are opened. And I believe that salvation is coming to the world through the gospel. And secularism, evolution, that false myth of our past is going to be done away with someday. I honestly predict that 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, people are going to look back at this time period and say, they believed that. They believed that you could have a child and that child potentially could be a different species, or that after 1,000 generations, it could mutate into a different species and all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, wow, that was crazy. How did anybody believe that? Well, it's because of hatred of God. We don't want the obvious truth staring at us in the face. And so we want to come up with these reasons to justify our sin, our harlotry, our abominations, our murders and thefts and riots and burning buildings down, right? We're all just animals anyways. There's no real law that we're under. Sex being one of those things that disproves evolution is really awesome because according to the Christian worldview, sex isn't this thing that just came about by accident or just by God's providence, but no, he created male and female from the dust of the earth, or rather female from the side of man. And the two shall become one flesh, not just metaphorically, but literally. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate. There's something actually meaningful going on between a man and a woman in marriage. And again, this isn't something that anybody can deny. Ask any college-aged woman who is having a lot of different relations, or even man, they're not going to be able to deny that what they're doing is absolutely awful, not just for their souls, but for everyone else that is involved. If we all are just animals and we should be acting like animals in that way, then why is it that humans get so emotional about it? Why do they get so anxious? Why do they start killing themselves? Animals don't really do that. Well, according to secularism, you can't really actually answer that question. And even if you do, it's just relative anyways. And so you don't actually have the answers on literally anything. Such a sad worldview, honestly. That's why we talk to these people, pray for these people. They need to be saved. They need Jesus. They need Jesus who has all the answers. The good answers, the best answers, the only true answers to all these big questions. There is a lot more to be said about this topic, especially regarding the biblical picture of what marriage is supposed to reflect, but I think I've made my point. God help us all.